Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 112, Chasing the Stars. The setting sun faded away, replaced by a scattering of stars that adorned the sky peeking through the tree branches. The Imperial Army's patrol squad made their rounds on the streets and alleys. Carrying Shenzhequan on his back, Xiao Qiye walked along the street shrouded under a cloak of shadows. It was a little hot this summer night, and Xiao Qiye had his ceremonial outer garment open as he walked in a leisurely pace. Shenzhequan lifted his head high and put his chin on top of Xiao Qiye's hair. Xiao Qiye was too tall, causing the upper half of Shenzhequan's body to be exposed to the moonlight. He only had to turn his head, and he would have been able to look over the wall into other people's courtyards. "I'll head for the old camping grounds tomorrow morning and intercept his escape route from the east. He won't dare to head north, and there are troops lying in ambush to the south. I'll be back in 3 days, at the very latest," Xiao Qiye said as he supported Shenzhequan's weight. "It has been a long time since we last got news of Chu capital. We have to send someone to make inquiries as soon as possible. Only then will we know of Qi Ziyuan's movements. The marriage between the Hua and Qi clans has been delayed again and again. In order to get external aid, the Empress Dowager will not let Qi Shiyu wait any longer." Shenzhequan estimated the dates and said, "The wedding will not be delayed beyond the 8th month at the very latest. Hua Xianji can go right ahead and marry all she wants," Xiao Qiye said. "As long as she doesn't have an heir, it's still Qi Ziyuan who has the final say in Qidong. She's going there to be the second wife, and she's even younger than Qi Ziyuan. If she gives birth to a son, he will be Qi Shiyu's legitimate son of direct descent. Once Qi Shiyu croaks, mother and son will be the hidden obstacle that stands in the way of Qi Ziyuan from holding on to military power. The prestige of the commander-in-chief among the troops cannot be underestimated. Will she really fear a brother of direct descent who is younger than her by so many years?" Shenzhequan thought and said, "If she seeks peace back at home and lives in harmony with Hua Xianji, then she would instead save herself a lot of trouble. It hasn't been easy for Qi Ziyuan to be conferred a title. It's evident from the setbacks she faced when she took over Qidong's 5 commanderies. Not only is Chu capital deeply uneasy over her gender, but even Qidong internal military administration officials had also begun to stir." At this point, Xiao Qiye paused for a moment before he continued, "Besides, I have already handed over the genealogy records that I got someone to copy for Qi Ziyuan a long time back in Chu capital. Just with this alone, she will never let Hua Xianji give birth to a child. As long as Hua Xianji's standing in Qidong remained shaky, the Empress Dowager would never be able to turn the Qidong's garrison troops into her own right-hand men." However, this was all based on the premise that Chu capital still had no real emperor. If Chu capital were to push forth a new emperor before winter arrived, then Qi Ziyuan would be on track to face off with Libe. "I'm worried about Lu Guangbai." Xiao Qiye kept his relaxed expression in check and said, "After autumn, the Biancha cavalry will cross the boundary into our territories to plunder food. This is the time when their horses are plump and well fed, and they will choose to take a risk in order to better survive the winter. The Bianjun commandery relies on De province to allocate and distribute their military provisions. The 12 tribes of Biancha are well aware that they are poor, and they also know that the granary is built right in Bianjun, and it's close to the camps. That's why they would go after Lu Guangbai every time. Qidong's military provisions this year were cut by half. He's by far the worst off when it comes to surviving and defenses. My leaving of Chu capital only serves to exacerbate the situation and make matters worse for him." But this was something that even Shenzhequan had no way to help with. If Bianjun's position had not been so far east, and if there had not been Tianfei Watchtower and Suotian Pass stationed on both sides, then perhaps they could still send a message to Ji Qingqing, who was still in Juexi's Yanji harbor, and get Shidan to think of ways to buy a batch of grains from Juexi and send it to Qidong through He province as an emergency measure for Lu Guangbai. But Bianjun just had to be to the east of Cangjun. There were obstacles both to the left and right, and there was no other passage unless they transported it right under Kang Jun's nose. Qidong was not Juexi, either. Qizuyan had set up layers upon layers of impenetrable defenses there. It was simply impossible to think of passing through it without so much as sound. Bianjun was just like the night watchman standing on the edge of a cliff. It was a place similar to a desperate and hopeless situation. Finding the atmosphere heavy, Xiao Qiye turned a circle with Shenzequan on his back and said, "The utmost priority now is still to pursue and attack Lei Zhengzhi. Once we manage to secure Zongbo, it'll be easier to help Bianjun. As long as we can cross over Tianfei Watchtower, we will be able to arrive there directly." "Why are you still sniffing when I'm reeking of sweat all over?" Shenzequan wiped off the beads of sweat on the side of Xiao Qiye's neck with his fingers. He snuggled against his cheek and said, "Start running." Xiao Qiye jerked him once and answered, "Too tired to run." Shenzequan pinched Xiao Qiye's cheek and said, "If the second young master can't do it, then I'll do it." Xiao Qiye made a show of going to put him down and said, "Get down. This second young master shall see how you are going to carry me back tonight." Shenzequan tightened his arms around him. As he lifted his legs up, he said in all seriousness, "Why get so fired up over a minor matter? You can do it." Xiao Qiye lifted him up again. Shenzequan clung onto his back and edged his fingertips down along the front flaps of his clothes, pulling it down as he said into his ear, "Why can't Erlang do it? Erlang can do anything." Xiao Qiye turned his head. He was surprisingly calm as he asked, "Where to?" Shenzequan said, "To." Shenzequan had not yet finished his words when Xiao Qiye took a stride out with his long legs and broke into a run. Carrying Shenzequan on his back, he ran past the tree shades, stepping upon the moonlight of the summer night as he made his way into the alley where the lights were already extinguished. The patrol squad came and went, but they didn't even notice their figures. Xiao Qiye easily leaped across the small steps, where dappled shadows of trees fell upon his hair. There was a clatter as their shadows crashed into and broke up the starlight on the ground, like the free and reckless wind between heaven and earth. The young servant boy guarding the door to the small courtyard was still yawning. When he heard the knock on the door, he thought that the Marquis and Vice Commander had returned. With his clothes draped around him and with a lantern in hand, he went to open the door with a smile on his face. But there was no one at the other side of the door. "A ghost." The young servant boy blurted in a soft voice and poked his head out, but he did not see anyone to his left and right, so he quickly shrank back and trotted back to his room with his outer garment wrapped tightly around him. The corridor was dark, with no lit lanterns. Shenzequan's footsteps were in such disarray that he almost tripped Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye pressed Shenzequan up against the door panel and pulled off the ribbon that Shenzequan had used to tie up his hair, as they kissed. The kisses left Shenzequan gasping for breath. He reached out both hands behind his back and felt around in search of the door lock. "No key." Xiao Qiye lifted Shenzequan slightly. His eyes pressed in close before him, and he looked greedily at Shenzequan. "Can't enter." Shenzequan's heel slid down along the back of Xiao Qiye's waist, but then he raised his hand and pressed his palm against Xiao Qiye's approaching chin to stop it in place. He breathed out a double entendre with his hot breath, "If you can't enter, then you can't enter." Xiao Qiye pinched Shenzequan's mouth open and lowered his head to take in that sliding tongue. All of last night's exhaustion from the rushed journey seemed to have been swept away clean. Shenzequan swallowed and listened to the creaking of the door panel from the bumps. He wanted to ease that jarring sound, so he pulled Xiao Qiye closer until the latter was right on top of him without the slightest gap between them. "Let's build a home." Grinding against soft flesh, Xiao Qiye's throat tightened as he said with a sigh that had escaped, "Here. Or anywhere else." Shenzequan was sweating as he raised his head with misty eyes blurred by tears. He did not make a sound. He had not done it for a very long time, and he was being so stimulated tonight that he was trembling slightly. In just a few times, and it was all about to come. He clenched the clothes on Xiao Qiye's shoulder, creasing it as his chest heaved violently. It was only when he calmed a little after a while that he said under his breath, "No. Can't. Into the room." But Xiao Qiye took this no as a reply to his earlier question and abruptly straightened his back, almost causing Shen Zequan to cry out involuntarily. "Why can't Erlang do it?" Xiao Qiye held Shen Zequan firmly in his arms and pinched the latter's face to correct its position. Then he said, ruthlessly and wickedly, "Erlang can do anything." Shen Zequan's words were cut off by Xiao Qiye's kiss. The corners of his eyes quickly reddened, and even his half-exposed neck had gone red. He opened his mouth several times in an attempt to answer in between kisses, but Xiao Qiye would not give him the chance. All he could do was to let out other kinds of sounds loose. Sweat drenched through his clothes, and Shen Zequan gradually found it hard to breathe. His forehead pressed against Xiao Qiye's chest as the waves of ecstasy crashing over him made him dizzy. It was not even an hour, and he had already surrendered twice. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Xiao Qiye had finished taking a bath only after Shen Zequan fell asleep. Seeing the first glimmer of dawn outside the window, he did not take a rest but instead drank a cup of strong tea and crouched by the bedside to watch Shen Zequan sleep soundly. He still fell asleep, after all. Xiao Qiye raised his hand to caress Shen Zequan's cheek. Once he returned to Libei, he had to invite the venerable Yugi over. Having turned it over in his mind from different angles after the episodes, his conclusion was that the frequent recurrence of Shen Zequan's illnesses, whether it was the cold or the epidemic disease, definitely had something to do with that medicine. "He's too thin." Xiao Qiye gazed at Shen Zequan and thought in the silence that reigned all around him. Although he had also previously found Shen Zequan's back to be too thin back in Chu capital as well, it was still much better than now. Shen Zequan's bout of illness after Qi Huilian's death came and went quickly, but he had still yet to be fed back to health. They have nothing much on their entire journey to get here. Xiao Qiye held him, watched him, protecting his growing reliance on him every way he could. Shen Wei and Bai Cha did not matter. Xiao Qiye lowered his head and pressed up against Shen Zequan's cheek as he stared, with deep hostility, at the sunlight which was attempting to cloak Shen Zequan. Shen Lanzhou was his Xiao Xian's. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Xiao Qiye spurred his horse out of the city, Zhou Gui and Kong Ling saw him off. Reining in his horse, he said, "I will return in 3 days, regardless of success or failure. The Imperial Army stationed here will stay put for the time being. The instant they detect Lei Jing's trail, send someone to inform me post-haste. Although Tse province's city walls are old and worn out, you cannot simply just let it be and brush it aside. Lanzhou will explain the specific arrangements for reinforcements to both of you later. Rest assured, your lordship." Zhou Gui said. "All our men in Tse province will go along with the vice commander's arrangements. As for matters relating to the reconstruction of Tse province's garrison troops," Xiao Qiye paused for a moment and said, "I won't concern myself with it. That will be military affairs that Lanzhou will be deliberating over with both of you. The Imperial Army is only standing in as the authority on patrols. I can't overstep authority to handle it. So, if there are any issues, please discuss them over with Lanzhou. I'm not at liberty to decide." Kong Ling felt a warm buzz in his heart before it went cold again. They were originally worried that Xiao Qiye would use the patrols he was standing in for as an excuse to interfere with the reconstruction of the Tse province's garrison troops. So, he was relieved to hear him say so, but following right after, worries overtook him again. Xiao Qiye did not want Tse province's military power. He would not accept Tse province's remuneration, nor would he take Tse province's grains. Then why did he go to the trouble of running all over to fight it out with Lei Jing? He might as well head north and return home to live a free and unfettered life. Kong Ling deliberated over his words, but before he could speak, he heard Xiao Qiye continued, "Since I've agreed to suppress the bandits for both of you gentlemen, I'll not renege on my promise. Your Excellency Zhou is willing to risk his head to let the imperial army pass through Tse province. I naturally have to reciprocate this friendly sentiment. Moreover, the imperial army's food supply these few days is being borne by the common folks of Tse province. We have eaten your rice, so we will surely fight the battles." Zhou Gui bowed to him in farewell and said, "Then we shall wait here for your lordship to return in triumph. There are a few more matters I'll just tell both of you at the same time." Xiao Qiye's horse took a few steps around as he looked at Zhou Gui and Kong Ling and said, "I do not have the intention to take a concubine in this life. Now that I'm temporarily residing at your Excellency Zhou's residence, there's no need to send any more people to the courtyard. Man or woman, I don't want any of them. Moreover, we are currently bogged down with work, I don't have the spare energy to beat around the bush with you both. So, I'm throwing this out here today to make it clear to both of you." Kong Ling knew he was referring to the incident the last time, and he could not help but look embarrassed, stuck in a predicament where it would be inappropriate for him to smile or answer. Lan Zhou has lived in Zongbo for a long time and it's inevitable that there will be someone bringing up old affairs. But, Shenzhequan, Xiao Qiye raised the horsewhip and pointed in the direction of the Chu capital, is the student of Qi Huilian, the grand tutor of the crown prince in the eastern palace, the last disciple of Ji Gang of Duan province, the former northern judge and vice commander of the Jin Wei, and the head of the household of the Xiao Cian's future residence. He has nothing to do with any other names. This time, even Zhou Gui did not know how to answer. He was not a person who would play trick to others or give others the runaround to begin with, and Xiao Qiye's words had rendered him dumbstruck. His mouth opened and closed as he said, Xiao Qiye turned his horse around and rode away with his gerfalcon in tow. It was a long time before Zhou Gui returned to his senses. Clutching his sleeves, he asked Kong Ling, what did his lordship mean by this? Then the Prince of Libei. He has already laid out his cards on the table this clearly. He doesn't care about the troops in Tse province but don't mention Shen Wei. Kong Ling calmly wiped his sweat and said, "And don't bring up Bai Cha, again." End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 113, Reunion. Ding Tao sat cross-legged on the veranda, moving aside the fruits on the silver plate as he counted them over and over again. He stood guard here, preventing anyone from coming near. It was getting late, with just a few rays of the evening sun still adorning the courtyard walls as bits and pieces of the setting sun peeked through the leaves of the pagoda trees. Shenzhequan had just woken up. He had slept for too long and too soundly, so his back and waist were sore and aching. He felt exceptionally tired. He opened the door and blanked out for a moment when he saw Ding Tao. Ding Tao scratched his cheek, feeling uncomfortable with the way Shenzhequan was staring at him. He put the hand that was still grasping the fruit behind his back and asked with apprehension, "Young master, would you like some dinner?" Shenzhequan held onto the door and stood there for a little while, before asking in a hoarse voice, "What time is it?" "It's the hour of you." Ding Tao was surprisingly aware today and he quickly followed up with, "Young master has slept for the entire day. Master left the city at the hour of Mao earlier. His Excellency Zhou and Mr. Changfeng went to send him off together." The corners of Shenzhequan's eyes were still a little red, and under the lingering reddish-orange glow of the evening sun, he looked as if he was drunk. He was pale to begin with, and Ding Tao found the way he looked when he lowered his eyes to put on his shoes really handsome. Still no word from Zhuexi. Shenzhequan went down the steps but he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he stood under the pagoda tree and tilted his head up slightly to look at the sky as he slowly recovered from the lingering effects of last night's exertion. No Ding Tao followed behind Shenzhequan. Seeing as Shenzhequan did not look back, he seized the opportunity to hastily stuff the uneaten half of his fruit into his mouth and gobbled it down ravenously. Shen Zequin did not see any sign of Meng, and knew that Xiao Qiye had brought it along with him. He turned back, startling Ding Tao so much that he choked and coughed. Shen Zequin paused for a moment and then said, "No one is going to snatch it away from you. Take your time." Ding Tao was choking so much that his eyes teared up. As he waved his hand, he tugged at the front of his clothes and said with difficulty, "Why, young master, cough? Are we going to look for His Excellency Zhou?" His Excellency and Mr. Cheng Feng had taken their dinner in the front hall and are presently discussing matters. Shen Zequin nodded and said, "Let's go." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Zhou Gui had just finished his meal. At present, he was having a discussion in the study with Kong Ling and the various Tse province officials of differing ranks. When he heard that Shen Zequin had come, he immediately got up and dismissed the others. "His lordship has told us that the vice commander is feeling unwell today, so we thought that we would only be able to discuss military affairs tomorrow. We didn't expect the vice commander to still come over today." Kong Ling showed Shen Zequin a seat, then sat down after him so that he would not feel awkward. He faced them slightly and continued, "Although it's still the 6th month, the trees we have planted in the residence are all tall, lush trees. It's often cold at night. The vice commander is used to Chu capital after staying there year in, year out. Now that you're here, you have to take care of your health." Shen Zequin took a sip of tea to moisten his throat, easing up the dryness and hoarseness a little until it was not as obvious. Only then he said, "Mr. Cheng Feng is right. Mr. said that we would be able to discuss military affairs tomorrow. Have both of you already drawn up a charter today?" "Ever since the vice commander agreed on a treaty of alliance with us, I have gathered the advisors along with the various ranking officials in Tse province over these few days to draft up a simple copy." With a hand on his knee, Zhou Gui watched as Kong Ling got up to hand a book to Shen Zequin. He continued, "These are all tentative. We will still need the vice commander's approval for the specifics. Take a look. If there's anything inappropriate, we can lay it all out for further discussion tonight." Although he said that they were waiting for Shen Zequin's approval, he also said they could lay it all out for further discussion. This meant that most of the content within this book was actually already finalized. Such was the awkward situation in which Shen Zequin had found himself in right now. He had the money but no other real powers on hand to speak of. Xiao Qiye's attitude was the key to the fact that he could even be at the discussion table with these two. Zhou Gui could thank him or even hold him in high esteem, but he would not hand over Tse province's policy-making power to him. Because what they had agreed upon was a treaty of alliance, not a pledge of allegiance. Shen Zequin read the book amidst the silence in the study. Only Ding Tao was on the outside, teasing his sparrow. There were no servants walking about to disturb them. As Kong Ling drank his tea, a sudden uneasiness overtook him. He maintained his composure as he studied Shen Zequin's expression, but he could not discern any sentiments on Shen Zequin's face. He then looked at Zhou Gui, who was already letting his expression betray his urgency. He could not help but think to himself. This Shen Zequin was still young, yet he was an extremely deep and shrewd one. After spending several days together, Kong Ling still could not tell whether he was a willing party or not. There was no way they could find an appropriate way to deal with him. So, the drafting of this book was also meant to sound out his intention as well. It was only when the sky had slightly darkened that Shen Zequin closed the book. He rubbed his fingertips against the teacup without saying a word. Kong Ling was the advisor, so when they were engaged in a serious discussion of official affairs in the study, he could not overstep his authority and bypass Zhou Gui. At the same time Zhou Gui got him to light the lamps, he turned slightly to his side to face Shen Zequin and deliberated over his words. "So what does Your Excellency think? Your Excellency has also recorded the price fluctuations of the daily necessities of fuel, rice, oil, and salt in Tse province over the past few years in the book, and the accounts are all clear enough that there won't be a problem estimating next year's approximate expenditure. I've also seen that Your Excellency has also written about the proportion of military pay and provisions to be allocated for the garrison troops in the future. Your Excellency has worked day and night tirelessly, taking all the various aspects into consideration. Shen Zequin said with a smile. Zhou Gui let out a light sigh of relief. He did not know why he was so strung up. Upon hearing Shen Zequin, he then replied, "This book is not something I alone can write, I still have Cheng Feng and my fellow officials to thank for this. Then, shall we begin to discuss the defenses of the city walls?" Shen Zequin's fingertips paused in place. He said, "There's no rush. I have some questions." To which Zhou Gui hurriedly prompted, "Please, go on." Going by Your Excellency's estimation of Tse Province's approximate expenditures next year, there is also a remuneration of 16,000 dan of grains for the 20,000 Imperial Army troops other than the rebuilt garrison troops. The total sum for both armies is 110,000 dan of grains. Shen Zequin pondered it over. This is allocated according to the amount of bumper harvest in Tse Province last year, and it's also what had been saved up for the original number of people in Tse Province at present. But I can see that Your Excellency still has a remaining 10,000 dan of grains left unmarked. That's right. Zhou Gui answered. Although Xiao Qi said he did not want any remuneration, they could not really not give any for real. This 16,000 dan of grains was only enough to last the 20,000 Imperial Army troops 2.5 months. This was more than the monthly amount they allocated to the 20,000 Tse Province garrison troops. Although they were unable to supply a year worth of grains, they had already done their best. Zhou Gui was worried that Shen Zequin would found it too little, and so he said with sincerity, "It is with the hope that the vice commander and his lordship can understand that I showed Tse Province's accounts to the vice commander today. Because of the instability in De Province this year, our grains from last year were all successively allocated to Libei and Mount Luo. This is something that we could not have foreseen. We had the Juexi's granaries to assume responsibility for the supply of military provisions in the past years, but now this responsibility has been split between the two prefectures of Tse Province and Huai Province. I don't know about Huai Province, but our Tse Province really had to skimp and save in order to be able to ship out the grains. It's not that I'm complaining to the vice commander, but to tell you the truth, we are gritting our teeth as we shoulder the burden of the temporary supply of grains from Tse Province to his lordship's 20,000 Imperial Army. But even then, we will only be able to hang on for a couple of months. Fortunately, it's nearing the autumn harvest, and we will be able to make it till then after counting the days. That's why we are still not at the stage where we are at the end of our rope. I would like to ask the vice commander to intercede with his lordship on behalf of Tse Province regarding this 16,000 dan of grain. It's not that we want to go back on our words by shifting it to next year, but there is really too much to consider." There was already an imprint of a frown permanently etched between Zhou Gui's eyebrows, given how he was always knitting his brows in worry. He rose to his feet and paced for a few steps in the open space before he said to Shen Zequin, "Tse Province is a place where the people's livelihood is at the mercy of the elements. But who could say if heaven would still be willing to grant us food next year? Seeing as De Province has already come to this stage, I fear that once war arises next year, the fertile farmlands that Tse Province had just cultivated would be destroyed in just a moment. When the time comes, even the common folks in the city will not be able to eat their fill. And we won't be able to afford to provide for the garrison troops even if we established one. We kept a surplus of military grains not only to keep them as emergency life-saving food relief but also as preparation for the Libei armored cavalry. Vice Commander, it's not that we are not willing to take out big sums of money for his lordship to use, but the Libei armored cavalry is the first line of defense guarding against the Biancha Hanshi tribe. It's a fact that they are more important than the 20,000 Imperial Army troops. Half of the reason why Tse Province is willing to sign a treaty of alliance with both of you is that I was thoroughly heartbroken and disillusioned by the Wei clan's military provision case. It's also because his lordship is the second young master of the Xiao clan that dispelled many of my misgivings. I did this favor not just for both of you, but also for the Xiao Shizi. Although the vice commander has promised that we can still continue to use the northeast supply route, I still have to leave myself a way out. After all, Jiuqing is the province's granary. To the various clans, that is a place of strategic importance. The vice commander covets it, and the Empress Dowager, even more so. Everything I have just said to the vice commander is heartfelt words from the bottom of my heart. Zhou Gui finally paused. He slowly bowed to Shen Zequan and continued, no one has it easy trying to make a living in turbulent times. I'm the prefectural prefect of Qiang province and to me, Qiang province's safety is of utmost importance and priority. His lordship and the vice commander have helped Qiang province out of a tight spot this time, and I will not hesitate to go through fire and water for both of you. If Qiang province still has a bumper harvest this year, then we can still add more to the 16,000 dan of grains next year. But Qiang province really can't supply the imperial army in the same way we are supplying to the Libei armored cavalry. I'll be frank with you. If the Bianchi tribes were to invade us in autumn, or if Libei is hard-pressed for grains next year in spring, then Qiang province will allocate the grains to Libei armored cavalry first before we allocate it to the imperial army. The candle flames in the study were not very bright. Zhou Gui lived frugally, eating and dressing simply. Other than the time he had to entertain Shen Zequan and Xiao Qiye, his entire family would usually have common dishes for their meals. They even cooked tree barks during the years they were hit with disasters. Qiang province currently seemed to be the most prosperous and well-off place in Zhongbo, but in truth, it was still in shambles compared to the other lands. His willingness to take out the grains was a great load of pressure on his shoulders. Zhou Gui's suggestion that they request the aid of the Libei armored cavalry the first time Xiao Qiye left the city was not made on the spur of the moment, it was an idea that was already deeply ingrained in his mind. The defeat of Zhongbo's troops had been said countless times, both implied and stated, but outsiders would never experience and share the same pain as those who had been through it. Zhou Gui even developed post-traumatic symptoms because of the troop defeat case. If he so much heard a whistle at night, he would toss and turn all night in a constant state of anxiety. The defeat of the Hashi River along the boundary was really too tragic. Massacre, this word made its way back to Chu capital from Duan province. Everyone was reading this word aloud back then. But to Chu capital, the bloodbath was merely a smudge of ink on the memorial. To Zhongbo, however, the destruction of properties, loss of lives, and ruin of families were all too real. It was all because of the Libei armored cavalry that Qiang province had a narrow escape. In the eyes of Zhou Gui and everyone in Qiang province, the Libei armored cavalry was far more important than the imperial army. Xiao Jiming led his godly troops down to save them, and the glacier armored cavalry was thus the death exemption token in the face of the Bianchi cavalry at the two borders to the provinces north and east. Lei Jingzhi dared to target the Qiang province, but he did not have the intent to settle down for long. He was even ready just to rob Qiang province's grains and leave to seek credit right away from Chu capital. What he feared was precisely Xiao Jiming's deployment of his troops to the south again. Xiao Jiming suffered a loss and was wounded in the military provisions case. But none of them had seen it with their own eyes. Those who were waiting for him did not dare to believe it, while those who feared him did not dare to bet on it. If the conservative senior officials headed by Hai Lianji feared Xiao Fangxiu, then the one those juniors down the ranks feared more was Xiao Jiming. Silence reigned in the study. The candlelight flickered. Shen Zequan felt his back and waist aching. There were still traces of Xiao Qiye's bites on his collarbone, which had been covered up by his collar. Strangely enough, even at such a serious and solemn moment, he remembered Xiao Qiye's sweat-drenched face, Xiao Qiye's strong arms, and Xiao Qiye's kisses that wandered around his neck as Xiao Qiye gasped for breath. He remembered everything about Xiao Qiye. The only thing he could not think of was a way in which Xiao Qiye was inferior to Xiao Jiming. Shenzhen was silent for only a few moments, and his mind wandered for only a fleeting instant. He said, I understand all that your excellency has said. We will return the exact same amount of the grains that Cen and I have temporarily borrowed after our arrival here next year. The color promptly drained from Zhou Gui's face. He tried to explain, Vice Commander, that's not what we. The issue I wanted to discuss with your excellency is not that the grains you are allocating to the imperial army are too little but that it's too much. Shenzhen motioned for Zhou Gui to sit and lay it out with clear reasoning. The fact that Tse province is willing to allocate so much grains for the imperial army's use is proof enough of your sincerity. But as we mentioned at the beginning, the imperial army will only use the grains from Tse province at this point in time. The imperial army has a supply channel for future military provisions, so it doesn't need to draw from Tse province's granary. Zhou Gui felt foolish and did not dare to interject arbitrarily, so he looked at Kong Ling and said, Chang Feng is the one who supervised the drafting of the book, so there are some matters that he understands better than I do. Chang Feng, explain to the vice commander. Holding on to the back of the chair for support, Kong Ling rose to his feet. Instead of explaining, he asked, the vice commander is so certain that the imperial army would not lack grains in the future, and you also said that the northeast supply route can still be used as usual. We really can't think of any countermeasure that would allow us to do this. Would the vice commander be so kind as to explain to us? Otherwise, we will still have to ask the imperial army to accept this batch of grains. Shenzhen gently stirred the tea in the teacup with the lid and said, before this, I still want to ask both of you if Tse province will continue to live off its land in the future. Kong Ling replied, Tse province is limited by its geographical position. If not, then how can we survive? What I see is the exact opposite of Mr.'s view. Shenzhen put down the teacup and said, it's true that Tse province is basically not in an ideal location. There's Libei to the north and Cha province to the south. It is obstructed by Dun province and Duan province to the east and restricted by Dan city to the west. It doesn't dare to move as it pleases, and it can't move at will either. But that was when Tse province was still subordinated to Chu capital. You are now on good terms with Libei. Dan city can no longer rely on Chu capital's power and influence to force Tse province to carry out orders. Meanwhile, Dun province has been occupied by the bandits and their purge is imminent. With these, the three-sided walls enclosing Tse province have already collapsed. The remaining Cha province is not an obstacle but an opportunity. Zhou Gui wanted to get up again. His robe had already gone all creased from his kneading of it. He asked cautiously, you mean? Cha province lies along the waterway that can lead right to He province. After the defeat of the troops, the merchants in He province who had come from all over took advantage of the opportunity to peddle the grains at exorbitant prices in Zongbo, earning quick and huge profits from bandits of all sizes. It would be truly a shame if this route is only used to make someone else rich. But bandits are also currently in power in Cha province. What's more, Cha province has relations with the Yan clan of He province. They won't let our Tse province use the route to do business without good cause. Kong Ling was growing anxious as he spoke. Besides, what can we sell? Compared to He province, Tse province is a remote hinterland. Grains. Shenzhen said. The moment he said that, Zhou Gui jerked to his feet and exclaimed, no. Isn't that the same as those conscienceless thieves who conspire with the Juexi officials and merchants to resell public grains for profit? Your Excellency, please calm down. The expression in Shenzhen's eyes was too calm, so calm that Zhou Gui could not help but sit back down. He said, the reason why there are people in Juexi and He province reselling grains at exorbitant prices is that there is a shortage of grains in the various lands of Zongbo, of which Cha province is hit the worst. In Chu capital, 1 tael of silver can buy you 2 dan of grains, while the same tael of silver in Juexi can buy you 1 dan and 5 do of grains. But in Cha province, 1 tael of silver can buy you only 2 do of grains. The money the bandits in Cha province have on hand is all fleeced from the remaining commoners in Cha province. Because of this, the law-abiding citizens registered on the household register cannot survive, and consequently, they are forced to take risks out of desperation. The number of people who are reduced to being bandits will only increase with time. Your Excellency, this is also the fundamental reason why Lei Changming, that is, Lei Jingj, is able to rapidly expand his troops to this number within 6 months. So, if Chse province is willing to sell grains to Cha province at a fair price slightly higher than Chu capital, it would be helping Cha province instead. But, Kong Ling frowned slightly, if we sell the grains to Cha province, then there will no doubt be a shortage in the granary. If we only have silver in our hands, then won't we be in the same plight as Cha province is in now? When the time comes, the conscienceless grain merchants in Jiuxi and He province would go even further in trying to fleece money from us. He province is far away. Even if Chse province wants to do business with them, there's no hurry to do so in these 1 or 2 years. I had some understanding of Hubei province when I left Chu capital. Hubei province contributed half the effort in the preparation of the military provision this time, and they have an abundance of grains in their granary. Dis city, which is on the outskirts of the Chu capital, lies to the southwest of Hubei province, and it leads directly to Jiuxi's harbor, too. Hubei province just happens to lack money if it wants to conduct businesses through Dis city. Chse province can first sell the grains to Cha province, then buy some back from Hubei province at a price lower than the selling price to Cha province. The surplus silver can be used as a subsidy for other areas, while the granary can maintain its abundance of grains at all times. This can give the Libei armored cavalry, or Chse province, some leeway at the crucial moments. The Jin Jiu had an assignment to keep track and record, which was actually to take detailed records of the commodity prices in the streets and alleys. When Shen Zequan was in office as the northern judge, he was in charge of the Jin Jiu military craftsmen and could leaf through the Jin Jiu's annual records of the various areas. Ji Qingqing initially wanted to have it copied down, but Shen Zequan spent the entire night memorizing it all down. He had been prematurely on guard against the unknown future and had not been willing to put all the important things down on paper that easily. As it turned out, he did right. They left Chu capital in such haste that they had no time to bring anything else along. But all the records, files, and old registries and books he had read before essentially went with him when he left. Zhou Gui was lost in thought. He contemplated it over and over again, then said, if Hubei province isn't willing, it's feasible. Loxia Pass lies to the east of Hubei province. It can transfer out local specialties from the frontiers of Libei, and it's a linear route to have them transported to the harbor. The more Kong Ling thought, the more excited he became. He could not help but walk a few rounds, then he slapped his thighs and said, that's right. We should have done it a long time ago. If Chse province doesn't learn to adapt to the current circumstances, then won't it keep being trapped in the same cage as before? This is workable. Shen Zequan never answered the question of how he would keep the northeast supply route in use, but Kong Ling was already too preoccupied to bother about it. In the candlelight, he seemed to see a new lease of life for Chse province. From what had happened with Lei Changming, he had thought Shen Zequan to be a man who would stoop to deception and trickery. But now, he had forgotten all about it. He wanted to grab hold of Shen Zequan to say his proper thanks, but then, when he extended his hand, he remembered Xiao Qi, and so he hurriedly retracted them and said, if we do this, then even if we have an oversurplus of grains in the next few years, we would not have to fear it growing mold in the granary. Then, let's discuss the garrison troops. Zhou Gui said from across the table. And the defenses of the city walls. Shen Zequan drank his hot tea. He had yet to open his mouth when he saw Ding Tao, who had been outside the study, poked his head in and waved his hand vigorously at him. What's the matter? Shen Zequan rose to his feet and walked over to the door. Ding Tao had gone out earlier, and he had been running until his entire head and face were drenched in sweat. He opened his mouth and said, Young master, young master. They're here. Zhou Gui and Kong Ling came closer too. One moment, they saw a very worked up Ding Tao. The next moment, he suddenly closed both eyes and burst out crying. As if sensing something, Shen Zequan walked out of the door in a daze. Sure enough, Ding Tao said as he choked with sobs, "Young master. The brothers are back. Qiao Tianya is back too. And that Ji." Shen Zequan was already taking large strides out to the courtyard. It was already completely dark outside, and he was still holding the teacup in his hand. As he walked, the tea spilled and scalded his fingers until they were slightly red, but he did not seem to notice, he had completely forgotten about it. He pressed on and walked outside the residence. It was a short journey but he was sweating all over. There were several carriages for the transportation of goods parked outside the residence, and a few tall figures were standing all spread out under the lanterns. The shorter one was still in his cloak and was turned sideways as he stood while resting beside the carriage. Shen Zequan's chest heaved. The rims of his eyes were already reddened but he forcibly held himself back, unwilling to lay his emotions bare here. Ji Gang turned around for a look on hearing the movements and saw Shen Zequan. He forgot all about the stone steps before him and nearly tripped. He revealed a headful of disheveled white hair and opened and closed his lips. Before he had even called out the name, he was already in tears. Chuan, Ji Gang was just like a child with white hair. Even as he was miffed with himself for being inarticulate, he was also anxiously beckoning to him. You. Shen Zequan descended the stairs in 2 steps and stepped forth to support Ji Gang by the arm. Ji Gang turned his hands around to grab hold of Shen Zequan's arms instead and checked him up and down. In this life, he was first Jin Yue in Chu capital and then a blacksmith in Duan province. Later, a great catastrophe befell him, and he lost both his wife and son to the Grim Reaper. Even so, he would still push himself to put on a tough act before others. But now, on seeing Shen Zequan, he could not control the tears from gushing from his eyes. Chuan air, Ji Gang wiped his tears with his rough fingers and looked at Shen Zequan over and over again. All the thousands of words he had to say became a single line of, "As long as you're fine." He was travel-worn and he had thinned down quite a bit. Chi Huilian was dead, and he had been feeling apologetic about it. At the same time, he feared Shen Zequan would have a rough time after leaving Chu capital and so he had traveled at top speed the entire journey, unable to eat and sleep well. All those suffering piled up over his already hunched back. He had long ceased to be the Ji Gang who was renowned in the world. However, this emaciated body of his was still willing to shelter and shield Shen Zequan from the elements. For this son, he could travel thousands upon thousands of li, and he could fight the great heroes of the world. He really had nothing else to ask for. He only wanted to see Shen Zequan alive and well. "Why have you become so thin?" Ji Gang could barely control himself from saying. "Shifu," Shen Zequan's voice trembled. "Why has Shifu lost so much weight? I'm too old to bear any torment." Ji Gang hastily wiped his tears and said happily, "I'm all good now that I've seen you." Qiao Tianya brushed the shattered teacup aside and kneeled on one knee. With the intent to ease the poignant moment, he said with a smile, "Although it was a few extra months' worth of journey, this mission was smoothly accomplished. Master, how about a reward of a meal and wine? Shifu, let's take a seat before we talk." ******. The courtyard that was not big to begin with became filled with people. Kong Ling told the kitchen to cook up some hot dishes and set up a table in the courtyard, whereupon he used on horseback to treat the newly arrived Jin Yue and Libei guards to a dinner. Qiao Tianya chased after Ding Tao's plump sparrow with a pair of chopsticks and said, "We've all gone thin from all the running about but you fed it until it's all fat. Are you planning to make it into a dish for us to enjoy with wine?" Ding Tao was initially happy. But upon hearing him, he scooped up the sparrow and said sharply, "No. Gu Jin was starving." Even in the intervals when he was busy shoving rice into his mouth, he did not forget to extend his chopsticks and hit Xiao Tianya's chopsticks back. He said in a muffled voice, "You need a spanking or something. Why do you have to insist on bullying a kid? Your share of the food during the journey was never deducted." Chen Yang said as he sat and drank the wine. "So why are you still this hungry?" Brother Gu gave out all his food to the children begging along the way. It was Fei Sheng who socialized with them. He knew that everyone would be fellow comrades in the future, so he chose his words and picked the nice things to say. Brother Gu is quite the chivalrous one to dig out a good amount of copper coins to buy steamed buns for them. Help others in an emergency but not if they are in constant poverty, Chen Yang said earnestly with good intentions. You really have to change that habit of yours where you go all soft-hearted when you see others weep. There's a shortage of food everywhere now. I'm not telling you to refrain from doing kind deeds, but you really need to know your limits. You spent all your money. Ding Tao sprawled over the side of the table and said, "Jingur, didn't you say the last time that you would hand it over to me? You said, I'll save it all up for you to marry a wife. I've long said to leave it with me. I remember it very clearly." As he spoke, he fished out his little book. "It's still written here that you drank wine and borrowed 3 copper coins from me during the spring festival 3 years ago. Of course, I don't care about this bit of money. I don't care. Really, Gur, I'm just..." Gu Jin ate to his heart's content. He stuffed the cotton he always brought along with him into his right ear, then turned to the left and said, "Is it wine from back home? Give me a jar. Only 3 cups. Qiao Tianya had already stopped eating earlier. He said, "You have to go with me to report to my master in a moment. Look at you drinking yourself drunk. Are you forgetting how his lordship punished you the last time? At this time, I'd advise you to act with prudence." He was usually laughing and joking. But he was the vice commander of the Jin Yue in the past, and he really gave off an imposing air when he played the part now. His tone was mild but his words were not as pleasant to the ears. Gu Jin frowned in irritation but he still nodded his head and said, "It's just a craving, I haven't had this wine for months." Gradually, Ding Tao stopped chattering. He was the youngest among these people, and they usually saw and treated him as a younger brother. None of the elder brothers had ever been stingy in buying him candy. As such, he was not afraid of anyone and would dare to get close with everyone. He was born a discerning person, one who was particularly sensitive to the exchange of emotions between people. He could sense that the various older brothers did not seem to be as relaxed as they looked on the surface, so he held his little sparrow in both hands and behaved himself while he sat at the side, making neither noise nor fuss. When they were almost done with their meals, Kong Ling arranged for some people to clear out the courtyard so that the guests who had been on the road all this while could rest. As it was already midnight, Shen Zequin sent Ding Tao to lead Ji Gang away for a rest. The few at the head all had matters to report, and so they stood in successive order on the veranda and prepared to take turns to enter. "Come on in all at once and take a seat. We can discuss it together if there's something you need to say." After all of them had entered, Shen Zequin sat in the main seat and asked Chen Yang first, "Did the preparation of the military provisions go smoothly?" Chen Yang sat upright and organized his choice of words for a moment before he said, "No. As young master had expected before I left, the officials of Hubei province tried every means and way to stonewall and stall the preparations. The war in Libya was intense at that time, and master's 2 days deadline was just around the corner. I was burning with anxiety. It was a guard of Loxia Pass, His Excellency Zhang, who stepped forth to vouch for me that made Hubei province finally willing to release the grains. Fortunately, we made it in time for the deadline, and the supply route leads right to Libya, so the military affairs were not held up." At this point, he fell silent for a moment before he continued, "I saw the heir apparent back in Libya. He's severely injured. When he heard that master was caught in a heavy siege back in Chu capital, he wanted to lead the troops over to receive him. Unfortunately, his lordship the prince overruled him. Shenzequan did not ask for further details. Instead, he turned to Gu Jin and said, "You came to Tse province to transfer grains back then. Zhougui isn't that hard to deal with compared to the Huai province prefectural prefect. So why are you still looking troubled now?" Gu Jin looked somewhat taken aback to be called out. Everyone present could notice his absent-mindedness. Shenzequan looked at him. Gu Jin replied, "It's true that I did not encounter any difficulties when I came to Tse province to supervise the preparation of military provisions. I went along with the troops to deliver it to the front line well in advance, and I even saw his lordship the prince at the eastern range of Hanjian mountains." He did not speak quickly, and when he stopped, he hesitated for a very long time. "I heard that master had left Chu capital, so I've been waiting for him to return home. It was when I saw Chen Yang in the army later that I knew master had stopped over in Tse province. And so I rushed over. Libei was just to the north of Tse province. By all reasoning, they should have been faster than Jiaotianya." Shenzequan tapped his fingertips lightly on the tabletop. He skipped over it and said to Jiaotianya, "How about you? Tell me the details." Jiaotianya propped up his arm on the chair handle and answered very quickly, "I hurried on my way to search for Shifu and teacher on master's order. I traced the trail in the inner chamber of the Shui's residence and discovered that Shui Ziozhuo had moved Shifu over to the Donglong's broker house, but there was no trace of Mr. We were a step late, and we could not get out of the city gate, so we could only go into hiding in Chu capital." As he spoke, he looked at Fei Sheng. It just happened that he was also leading his men to hide from the noble clan's searches. "We tried every means possible to get out of the city, but Han Cheng had the city so tightly guarded that not even a drop of water could get through. We really had nowhere to go, so we hid at his lordship's Plum Blossom residence. As luck would have it, it was in the Plum Blossom residence that I found the layout blueprint of Chu capital's public ditches that his lordship had tricked out of the Pan clan. This item was obtained by Xiao Qiye from Pan Lin when he had hosted a banquet after being promoted to a nobility rank. At that time, he was prepared to keep it for himself as a contingency measure. But by some unexpected turn of events, it became the key for Jiaotianya and the rest of them to escape from Chu capital. We crawled our way out from the public ditches." As Fei Sheng spoke, he reached a hand out to gesture with his fingers. "The public ditches in the various streets are all newly dug. I don't know if this was his lordship's intent, but they are all narrow on the outside and wide inside. There are even candles and field rations stored in the dry spots. Over 50 of us relied on these field rations to circle around the 8 great training divisions for more than 10 days before we finally came out of Chu capital at a place near Mount Feng. After we emerged, we realized that there were strictly enforced checks on public roads between Chu capital and the 8 cities. So we pawned off the gold, silver, and jade pendants on us and disguised ourselves as traveling merchants. We made a detour from the south of Chuan City to Cha province, then hurried from Cha province over to Tse province." Jiaotianya said. "When we arrived at Cha province half a month earlier, we heard that Han Cheng had already sent the imperial heir into the palace. But news was sparse after leaving Cha province, so we lost track of what happened after. As for other details, we'll have to wait for Qiang's letter." No one disturbed Shenzequan as he contemplated it over. He heard the sound of Ding Tao walking on the veranda and waited until Ding Tao walked to the door before he said, "Both of you are tired. So go with Ding Tao and take a rest for tonight." Fei Sheng was a discerning man who could take his cues. He was not in a hurry to lay his loyalty bare tonight either, so he rose in one smooth move, took his leave of the master together with Jiaotianya, and withdrew out of the room. ******. The candle flame flared a little and flickered for a moment. Gu Jin never lifted his head to utter another sound. He sank in the darkness, with the shadows from the candle flame cast upon the side of his face like two villains scuffling with one another. Shenzhequan was surprisingly cool-headed as he said, "Did something happen to both of you in Libei?" Chen Yang lifted a hand to partially cover his face and propped up his elbow on the chair handle. He said, "I've been staying close to Xiao Shizi, so nothing really happened to me. It's Gu Jin." Gu Jin undid his clasps in the unbearable silence, took off his upper garment, and turned around, thereby exposing his entire back right before Shenzhequan. He said, "These matters should have been reported directly to Master, but Master will only be back a few days later. As per Master's instruction back in Chu capital, I can report to young Masters first. I arrived at the area where the war was the most intense. His Lordship and Commander-in-Chief Zhou are both safe. After the conclusion of the military provisions investigation, I temporarily took up my original position as the vanguard of the reconnaissance squad, dealing with the cavalry of the Hanshi tribe every day. I can't remember which day, but we ran into an ambush when I was leading the squad back from the eastern mountain ranges. That back was already festering. The more severe spots had already been scraped away. Blood could still be seen seeping through the bandaged areas. I was hit by an arrow, but I managed to escape. I initially thought it was someone from the Hanshi tribe, so I led the remaining 200 men and skirted around the grasslands where the Hanshi tribe lurks to make our way back through the Tudalong Banner's swamps. But who would have known, we got ambushed again that very night at Tudalong Banner." Gu Jin pulled up his clothes over him. As he secured the clasps, he said, "Young Master, I was initially a scout. It's because of this pair of eyes and ears that I could be chosen by His Lordship the Prince as a guard. I may not be as good as I was before in all these years I've stayed in Chu capital, but after Master's admonition, I no longer dared to be negligent, especially on the battlefield where I tread with a lot more caution. That night, my marching route order was directly issued. I've never discussed it with anyone. Yet we got ambushed both times. So, I started to suspect that there's a spy from the Hanshi tribe within the squad. While escaping the second time, I discovered there was snake venom on the arrow. This poison had been smeared on Ding Tao's steel needles in the past. It's something that came from the Hanjian Western Mountain Range. My back was festering pretty badly and we were being closely pursued through the swamps. Then I was also bitten by some poisonous bugs. I couldn't hold out, and a fever broke out at dawn." At this point, Gu Jin stopped. He spoke dully and he paused many times as if repeatedly confirming to himself in case he said one word wrong. He knew the implications of his upcoming words. "Our horses all drowned in the swamp. I couldn't walk on any more. The Libei armored cavalry's Changzhou camp lies about 10 li or so south of Tudalong Banner. Strangely enough, no one was on patrol that day. I had my trusted junior general head back first while I remained where I was to wait for reinforcements. But no one came even after I waited from dusk to dawn the next day. I was worried that the spy would make use of this chance to enter Changzhou camp, so I pushed myself to hurry back. I barely escaped by the skin of my teeth back to the camp, but I was stripped of my blade and held in custody. I spent the entire night in the prison shack where the Biancha prisoners of war were detained. On the second day, I was taken to the front tent to be put on trial with the general of Changzhou camp, Guo Walai, presiding over it. Gu Jin omitted the details of the trial. He had no wish to recall it either. That was, to him, not physical pain, but a mental collapse of sorts. He continued in a very, very soft voice. "They said I was in covert communication with the Hanshi tribe to wipe out the vanguard squad even further east in the Tudalong Banner. They stripped me of my rank in the military and wanted me to confess if I had done so on someone else's instructions. I can't confess to something I have never done. I questioned Changzhou camp why they overlooked both of my consecutive requests for reinforcements, and they claimed that they never received it. According to military law, I would have to undergo a joint trial by 3 generals and have the current commander-in-chief give the approval in person before I can be executed. But Guo Walai kept insisting that the heir apparent have yet to recover from his severe injuries, and they had the authority to act on his behalf. If not for Chen Yang arriving in time that day, I would not be standing here before young master now. Shen Zequan picked out the candle wick with a silver needle, and the flame extinguished. He stared at that candle, which seemed to be shedding tears. In just an instant, countless thoughts had already flashed through his mind. He did not even need to be reminded by Chen Yang and Gu Jin to remember, from the letter of appointment by the Ministry of War, that this Guo Wulai was a person Xiao Jiming had single-handedly promoted. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Xiao Qiye followed the trail left by Lei Jingzhi and pursued him all the way to the north of the old camping grounds. He dismounted to grab a handful of soil, then looked ahead and slightly narrowed his eyes. Tan Tai Hu surveyed the mountain range and said, "They are going to step across Libei's boundary line if they continue on north. They won't dare to head there, so they can only split up and flee. Master, I suspect that he is leading us on a wild goose chase. It's too strenuous to keep chasing after them like this." "He's indeed doing just that." Xiao Qiye loosened his grip. "And they are fleeing in small groups. Naturally, we can't catch them all in one fell swoop with a large net. But if we split up now, we will fall into the other party's trap. He's unwilling to fight me head-on because he can't handle the momentum of the Imperial Army. He's worried that his own men will lose focus and morale. They are familiar with this area, so they try every means possible to lure us into splitting up into small groups so that they can break through our defenses one by one. We don't have enough cavalry." Tan Tai Hu examined the terrains. "This brigand is really too crafty. No rush." Xiao Qiye stood up. Meng returned from his patrol and landed on Xiao Qiye's shoulder. It stood together with Xiao Qiye in the night breeze. The wind rustled the grass, scattering a few strands of willow leaves before him. Of the 5 arms, only fire is the most intense. Once again, Xiao Qiye got on his horse. "I want a fire so blazing that he has nowhere to hide." Tan Tai Hu followed suit and got on his horse. He said, "But there are more lands than trees here. If set aflame, I fear the fire will spread to the grasslands of Libei." Xiao Qiye laughed out loud on the horse and said to Tan Tai Hu, "I'm not asking you to burn this place down. Go to the big towns and small villages along the way and get them to put up bulletins announcing that whoever harbors the bandits will be executed with immediate effect. If they inform the Imperial Army, they will be rewarded copper coins per bandit reported. I'll pay as much as they report. And tell them too, Tse province is about to issue a conscription notice. If they go, 3 meals a day will be provided if nothing else, and informants who have been rewarded cash from the Imperial Army will be given priority. Since Lei Jingzhi doesn't want to be found by us, I'll make him expose himself." Tan Tai Hu was hesitant but still said, "But didn't we run out of money? Go report the figures to Lanzhou." Xiao Qiye urged his horse on, then reined it in and looked back to say, "Can't this second young master even dig out some copper coins?" Tan Tai Hu looked embarrassed. Xiao Qiye twirled his thumb ring and said with a deadpan expression, "Oh." End chapter. Note: 1 dan is the dry measure for grain equal. 1 dan equals approximately 90 kilograms. 2 do is a dry measure for grain equal to 1/10 of a dan. 3 hour of yu is 5 to 7 p.m. 4 hour of mao is 5 to 7 a.m.